Hi, I'm Dr. Linda Mintle. Hey, thanks for listening to the Dr. Linda Mintle Show. Faith radio podcasts are only possible because of your support. Thanks for giving and for sharing with a friend.
Doing life together, reaching out with hope, encouraging one another, each step along the road. You and I can make everything a little better, doing life together.
Well, hi, everyone, and welcome to the Dr. Linda Mintle Show. I'm your host, Dr. Linda Mintle, the relationship doctor, and I'm here along with my co-host, the other Dr. Mintle, my husband, Norm. And every weekend we're here, we're doing life together, and we're just really glad you joined us.
We are indeed. And you know what? Oftentimes I tell a silly story or I set up the topic for the week. I'm just jumping into this because this is a topic that you are so passionate about. You talk about it, you talk to people, you talk to strangers on the plane about this one. You've been lecturing all over the country on this topic, and we want to set the record straight. So we're going to talk about the use of marijuana in America, and we're going to hone in on the misconception of what medical marijuana is or isn't specifically. Why did you get so passionate about this?
Well, that's a great question, Norm, because honestly, it stems from my previous work in the opioid epidemic. So, we came out of all the opioid crisis, and now we're having the legalization and commercialization of cannabis, and there are just a lot of similarities between the two movements. Both of them involve misinformation, and they've led to harm and addiction. It's like deja vu for me. I'm watching all the things that we had to correct and deal with on the opioid side, and now we're having to look at the cannabis side and correct that. Cannabis is marijuana, the name that most people know. And apparently, we didn't learn much from this past epidemic, and now we're going to have another one on our hands.
I understand that, but most people are going to say, oh, come on, Dr. Linda, smoking some grass versus opioids, that's pretty different. Let's talk about the comparisons.
Okay, so, the opioid crisis came up with Big Pharma. We've all heard about Big Pharma. There were movies made on this. There was a book that was done by Beth Macy, a bestseller called Dope Sick.
And Big Pharma means pharmaceutical.
Pharmaceutical, yeah.
Right.
And the pharmaceutical, the company that perpetuated this idea that opioids are not addictive.
Right.
So marijuana has Big Pharma with an F because it's grown on farms.
Right.
And you and I happen to know that Oklahoma has the best fertile soil for growing marijuana. We had no idea. I kept asking.
Who knew?
I asked the chair of psychiatry at Oklahoma State University. I said, why are there so many dispensaries? Because it's illegal in most places in Oklahoma. And he goes, oh, you don't know? We have the best grass for the grass. So it's
best
wild.
Soil, best something.
Right.
Ooh.
So in the opioid, they were saying, oh, opioids are so beneficial, so much benefit. Same thing we're hearing about marijuana, although it's not true.
So they're exaggerating the benefit?
Yes, they're exaggerating the benefits of it. And we're gonna cut that down right away.
Okay.
And then the risks have been minimized. They were minimized in the opioid epidemic. Same thing here.
And yet we know that opioids were horrendously bad for human beings.
I mean, they do all kinds of negative things. I mean, now there's some people that have to take them for different reasons, but they were being passed out almost like candy at one point in our history because people were thinking they had all this great benefit and no risk. And we didn't really understand chronic pain and addiction and all of that involved when the opioid use really geared up. And we'll get into maybe a little bit of, I don't want to go into the opioid part, but hospitals were forced to have, pain assessments on every patient and make sure that they brought pain down. It was called the fifth vital sign, pain. And then the same is true. We're not understanding how the use of marijuana is not really helping people, and it's leading to addiction. And I'm going to talk about how it onsets psychosis and schizophrenia in some people.
Wow.
So in both of them, here's the big one, Norm. They're both driven by huge financial incentives.
We hear it in movies all the time. Follow the money.
Follow the money.
Well,
That's right.
There it is. You're right. That's certainly we've just not heard these kinds of things yet. And that's why I think this program's so important for people. If you're listening and you have dabbled in any form of cannabis, the gummies, the candies, any of those things, or you know people who have, or you have relatives, get them to listen to this program because this is so important. So you mentioned Oklahoma. Let's use them as a case study because they're a very, very conservative, politically conservative state.
Yes,
so it's kind of hard to imagine that they would want to legalize the use of cannabis. Now, they didn't. There was a vote a few years ago where they turned down the recreational use, is what it's called, right?
Right.
But they still have allowed the legalization of medical marijuana. And that's very, very legal because, as you said, there are dispensaries on every other corner
in Tulsa. We live in Tulsa, and it's like every other corner. So the cannabis dispensaries, Norm, in the city of Tulsa alone are in every major shopping area.
Yes.
And according to a source, do you like this? Weed Map. That's the source.
How to find your nearest dispensary.
Well, exactly. There are 122 dispensaries in Tulsa County.
Oh, my goodness.
That's just a small area. That's a lot of dispensaries. And there is no way legitimate doctors are highly recommending marijuana as a treatment for many medical conditions. Marijuana use is not based on evidence-based medicine, and that's the part we're going to get into.
Okay, I hear you say evidence-based. Explain that. I understand that states have different qualifying conditions to get medical marijuana, but what does evidence-based medicine have to do with how that list gets developed and then how consumers get it?
It has nothing to do with it because usually what happens with a drug is it goes through clinical trials and all kinds of they're called randomized clinical trials, and they roll it out and they've tested and they've done studies and they find out that there's some use. That didn't happen with marijuana. It just rolled out. And let me tell you how this works. A state senator or representative usually sponsors a medical marijuana bill. Then the state legislator passes a medical marijuana law that legalizes use for certain medical conditions. Now, during the bill's review, the legislator hears testimony. So a lot of patient advocates for marijuana, groups that are really influential, mostly lobbyists who come from companies who are going to make a lot of money on this, and they're going to profit. So whoever has the most influence convinces the legislators to develop a list of supposedly valid ailments that marijuana can cure or help. And by the way, and this is really important, this list of qualifying conditions is not based on high-quality research, nor sound medical research. Rather, it's based on a lot of poor methodological studies sponsored by these profit groups, marijuana advocacy groups who stand to make big money from this. So the legislators are typically not physicians, nor highly qualified scientists and researchers, so they're easily swayed by these advocacy groups. And then the governor signs the bill into action. So do you hear that? There's no medical group sitting around and saying, oh, we have 50 studies that are really high quality, well done for anxiety. Now we're going to approve that. None of that happens. It's just a group of politicians who sit around and say, yeah, let's put that on the list.
Right. And they've been convinced or helped out to be convinced.
Right.
So it's interesting that in conservative states like Oklahoma, which also has a very conservative governor, they signed this bill. And after the voters approved it. And in that state, in Oklahoma, like many others, there's nothing specifically medically proven, is what you're saying, right?
It's like anything goes, yeah. And just to note, Norm, cannabis as a drug has not gone through the FDA approval, the way all drugs in our country are vetted. So I think that's really important for people to know. So let's back up. How do voters decide to legalize medical marijuana? Well, they are misinformed by lobbyists and all kinds of advocacy groups.
There are commercials on TV, I would presume. Vote for this, vote for this.
They're so not accurate. So it just makes me crazy. So evidence-based data has not been used like it would if marijuana went through the normal FDA process to approve a drug for medical use. That did not happen, which is why I will not call it medical marijuana, because what it really is commercialized and legalized marijuana. There is nothing medical about medical marijuana because reputable physicians, medical organizations, and the FDA have not approved marijuana for general use.
And why is that? It doesn't meet their standards?
Exactly. which is why it is classified as a Schedule I drug. And that means it has high potential for abuse and has no current accepted medical benefit under federal law. This means it never went through the rigorous large-scale clinical trials to demonstrate safety and effectiveness for a specific use before it was approved.
I'm guessing most people in the public don't know any of this, which is why this program is important.
Right.
I understand marijuana products have a wide variety in their THC. That's the part that makes you feel good?
Yeah, the euphoric part, yeah.
Making it hard to know how safe it is. And the potency is significantly higher. You laugh a lot and say, this ain't your daddy's grass from the 60s and 70s. It's not that. It's much more potent.
Yeah, that's right. And the cannabis typically consumed either by smoking or vaping has significant variability in its potency and consistency, which means it can do more harm to a person than they even realize.
So you can get a quote-unquote dose one day and get a very different dose the next time you go into that same dispensary.
Well, and we'll talk about how that happens. So there are a couple, I do want to say, there are a couple of conditions, but these are synthetic developed drugs for unique seizure conditions. So these are not, they are FDA approved. So there's one that is used to treat a rare seizure disorder. It's purified, but the plant itself has not been approved, but it's been okayed by the FDA. There's another one that's a synthetic, which means it's just made in the lab.
Yeah, it's not grown in a farm.
No, it's a version of THC,
Right.
and it's been used to treat a lot of weight loss in people with AIDS and chemotherapy. And then it helps with the nausea. And then there's a liquid version of that as well. And then there's one more that is similar to THC, and it's used to treat severe nausea and vomiting caused by chemotherapy. But that's it.
Yeah.
That's
okay.
it. There's nothing else.
All right. A whole lot more to go right after the break. So much more to discuss. We want you to know how easy it is to get a medical card. Not so you'll use it, just so you'll understand how crazy this is. More right after this break.
Being a generous person can have big benefits for you. Giving your time or your money or even your talent to someone else can obviously help the receiver. But did you know that being generous can roll some positive benefits back on you? This is Dr. Linda Mintle, the relationship doctor, and I'm here to share some of the benefits of generosity. Lower blood pressure, reduced stress, a better mood, and even longer life have been identified as benefits of being generous. That's right, physical and mental improvements for you just because you choose to extend something to someone else. What can you give? Your time, your talent, your support, oh, and yes, your money. You see, hoarding money like Scrooge may seem good for your wallet, but it's not so great for your health. One recent study actually showed that stingy behavior increases stress. So take a minute and just ask, what do I have that I can share? Then be generous and see how good you feel when you share something you have with someone else. Is every spare minute of your life filled with some activity, event, or demand? If so, you could be suffering from a very common American disease. It's called overcommitment, and it has seeped into every area of our lives. I'm Dr. Linda, the relationship doctor, and yes, I'll admit it, I've fallen prey to overcommitment in my life just like I imagine you have. Saying no occasionally is the best defense against overcommitment. But if it's too late and you're already overcommitted, here's a little tip to help you make it through. In the busiest days, you can still stop and take 5 just for yourself. When your heart is racing and your thoughts are whirling inside your head, your effectiveness just plummets. But if you'll pause right in the middle of all the hubbub, maybe close your eyes, breathe deeply, and remind yourself that the current task will be completed, you'll feel an immediate sense of relief. Then you can head back into the job at hand with renewed focus and energy. And when the next chance comes to overcommit, it comes your way, you can work on your priorities by just saying, hey, no.
Welcome back to the Dr. Linda Mintle Show. Powerful, important program today, but just before we get back to our topic about medical marijuana, I wanted to remind you that you can follow Dr. Linda on her social media platforms, X and Instagram, at Dr. Linda Mintle, and on Facebook, Dr. Linda Mintle, author and speaker. Or you can just go to her website, drlindamintle.com. And there you'll find everything about her, her books, her blogs. You can listen to our podcast there. You can link it there, or you can go to My Faith Radio or your favorite podcast platform. Just search for her podcast and go to myfaithradio.com. So before we continue, we had stopped after you had listed some legitimate uses of medicines
Medical
that have been
marijuana.
approved, right? So not all the conditions that are listed, though, on a card or that people get a card for are approved by the FDA. They're not prescribed. So help us understand how it is that these dispensaries are getting away with dispensing quote-unquote drugs that are prescribed by doctors.
I know. So it is a really good point because most all of those conditions are not evidence-based. So that's not, they're not working for those conditions.
Yeah.
So how many people have a rare seizure disorder?
Right.
Like most people buying those cards, that's not what's going on. In fact, cannabis usually worsens most of the medical conditions it's purported to help. So all those conditions are not conditions that have been shown to be helped by medical marijuana.
My tummy ache.
Yeah.
I'm anxious.
I'm anxious. Well, we'll go through those. Let's take anxiety.
Okay.
Let's do that one. People say, oh, it calms me. Yes, because you're altered. And once the drug wears off, you are no better off and actually at a higher risk for mental health and health problems. So, Norm, anxiety increases with regular use, although its symptoms are often masked because you're altered. Also, using the drug increases the risk of an onset of a psychotic or mental health disorder.
Goodness.
And using it after the onset of a mental condition physically worsens clinical outcomes. So that's scary.
That is scary. And here's something scarier to me. There are over 100 conditions that legislatures around the country have approved for medical marijuana with no evidence at all of help, which is what you're saying. In fact, there's a growing body of evidence of harm. This reminds me of when we were young. I remember seeing TV commercials with doctors on there smoking cigarettes and telling us it was good for us.
Oh, oops, wrong.
Yeah, not so good.
It's like the opioids, right? We talked about. So the reason we're talking about this now is because marijuana use has actually overtaken alcohol use in America. It does not work for PTSD, which the Veteran Administration has stated, nor for most chronic pain conditions. When you're in pain, you can feel euphoria, but you're altered when you take it. Medically, it is not treatment for help. Rather, it is associated with harm. And sadly, many Christians are using it thinking it's a legitimate medical intervention.
Okay, talk more about these harms.
Well, aside from the normal concerns about secondhand smoke and its effect on small children, it affects the user's brain and health, brain health and heart health by impacting memory, learning, attention, decision-making, coordination, emotions, and reaction times.
Oh my goodness, that's quite a list. I know you're part of a medical advisory group and one of your members works with the law enforcement community. They're telling you that police now are pulling more and more people off the road due to driving under the influence, not of alcohol, but of marijuana.
Yeah, and I learned that those drivers under the influence often accelerate and lose their depth perception. So they end up following people too closely, which causes accidents. They overcorrect in their driving, is what the police were telling us, because they're altered. Perception is altered, and they are not safe on the road.
Good grief. Okay, I want to know about the medical marijuana card, but first, let's talk about teenagers and pregnant women.
Yeah, marijuana is especially dangerous for teens whose brains are still developing. So with no history of mental illness, regular daily users can become psychotic, and they can onset schizophrenia, which would be a lifetime mental illness, and it's not reversible. And here's more bad news. Teens can lose up to 8 points in their IQ, and that also is not reversible.
I wonder if that would change anybody's mind. That's so scary.
I know.
This incidence rate that you're talking about is increasing. And it's increasing because there's a perception that marijuana is harmless. And we had a president who told us it was harmless. And now it's so easily purchased, you no longer have to sneak around in the dark alleys and get a drug dealer and be afraid you'll get caught and sent to jail. These stores are well lit and they're everywhere.
And for pregnant women, marijuana use is associated with low baby birth weight. Additionally, we don't know enough about the impact of marijuana on the developing fetus in a pregnant woman. So in general, marijuana use can increase your heart rate, your blood pressure, your risk for stroke, heart disease, and other vascular diseases. Obviously, when it's smoked, it can harm your lungs as well.
Sure, there's no filter on it, right?
It affects the user's brain and heart health by impacting memory, learning, attention, decision-making, all those things we said before. Finally, we're seeing a record number of children hospitalized for ingesting their parents' edibles. And if that's not enough, there's another scary condition, which we won't go into, called cannabis hyperemesis syndrome, that sends people to the ER in writhing pain.
So you said the word edibles. In case people don't know, what is that?
Gummies, brownies, edibles, like something you can eat.
Not smoking it.
Right.
I gotcha. Okay.
Right.
Well, I hope our message is clear today. This is not a harmless drug. Let's go through the process now of how one does get a medical marijuana card. This information, I think, is going to open some eyes.
Yeah, it opened my eyes when I found out what this was all about. So in states where medical marijuana is legal, you need a written recommendation. I want to say that again, recommendation, not a prescription.
Wow.
It's just a recommendation from a healthcare provider to get the drug.
Wait, healthcare provider doesn't mean doctor?
Well, somebody who prescribes. So it could be a nurse practitioner or somebody who prescribes.
Okay.
As we said, the state's list of medical conditions for marijuana use lacks evidence that cannabis works for any of those conditions. Those lists are not approved by the FDA nor medical associations.
Okay, so why would a doctor actually write a recommendation, quote unquote, when it's not based on evidence or science that it works and in fact could harm my own patient? Why would I do that?
Yeah, that's the question of the day. And actually, when I ask at every medical meeting and conference that I attend, the answer is that, well, it's only a handful of doctors who are making quick money. And here's the thing. These appointments with the doctors are usually over the internet. They run about 10 minutes. So no detailed history of your medical conditions, your life issues, or the typical workup a physician does before any medicine is dispensed. It's usually an online process, costs less than $100 to get the card.
Oh, my goodness. All right, this is really important for us to know. This is not good medicine, people. In fact, I'm crazy about this. It infuriates me when you talk about it. These so-called physicians should have their licenses revoked, in my opinion.
Well, yeah.
So once you get the card, the recommendation, then what happens?
So once you get your medical marijuana card, here's what you do. You go to a dispensary or an authorized seller where a bud tender.
A what?
A bud tender. And now they're trying to change that name, Norm. They're trying to call them med tenders to make it sound more medical.
So like a bartender is a bud tender.
Yeah, a bud tender with no medical training dispenses the product. So think about that. These people have no medical training. They're selling you products that can impact your health and mental health in a really significant way. And what's their goal?
Money.
That's it. They don't care about your health. I think this is just frightening to me, especially when I see a pregnant woman using these products for nausea. I mean, this is going to harm the baby. And they don't realize it. And we actually I went into one of the dispensaries, and the guy, the bud tender, said, oh, yeah, it's great for nausea and vomiting for pregnant women. And I was like, you have no medical training, and that actually causes harm. How dare you tell women this? Of course, nothing happened, but I feel like I should have taken a camera crew in there.
No kidding. My thought is that someday there's going to be enough people who are harmed by this that there are going to be class action suits, and maybe we shut it down because following the money, now they're getting hurt financially.
It may be just like the opioids, right?
Okay, how do we Christians think about all this?
Okay, so wisdom dictates we follow the research and consider the harm. So according to Proverbs 14:15, this is what it says. The simple believe anything, but the prudent give thought to their steps. That's wise advice. We need to take the politics, which are not based on medicine, but they're based on an ideology and money. Mm-hmm. We need to take that out of it. And instead, we need to follow the data, and we need to be very wise and prudent.
And we need to learn our lessons from the past. Wisdom and education are needed. That's why we're talking about it.
Yeah. So here's the bottom line. Stop listening to opinions and subjective reports that are not based in scientific study. Marijuana sales are a massive money-making business, more concerned with profits than your health. It's a product that not only masks a problem for the moment, but then can lead to addiction, psychosis, and worsening health. Teens, psychiatric patients, and pregnant women are the most vulnerable to negative impacts. So be prudent, get educated, and seek help for whatever mental health or health issue you face using what we know is safe and scientifically proven. And most of all, ask God to give you the wisdom and the Holy Spirit to direct you in all things. Well, that's all the time we have today. Many thanks to my co-host Norm Mintel, who makes this show a conversation, and our technical producer, Wanjing Pu, and our editor, Katie Sims-Wilson. Hey, from all of us here at Faith Radio, we'll talk to you again next weekend. In the meantime, remember, we're doing life together, and it's better when you don't have to do it alone.
Doing life together.
Hey, thanks for listening to this conversation from the Dr. Linda Mintel Show. These conversations are available because of your support. Become a supporter now at myfaithradio.com. Please subscribe to the podcast so you don't miss any episodes, and share it with friends so we can live life to the fullest, walk confidently, and find healing and hope.